Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1 Cheryl Elston. We warmly welcome the family of Private Frederick Joseph Anthony Kelly, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Joseph Anthony Kelly. Frederick Kelly was born on the 21st of March 1897 in Gundagai, New South Wales. Known as Fred, he was one of 9 children born to railway worker James Kelly and his wife Sarah Jane. In 1904, Sarah Jane died of septicemia, leaving Fred and his siblings in the care of their father. Several of Fred's siblings moved away from home, and Fred's older sister helped to raise those who were left. When she married in 1906, she moved to Sydney with her new husband, and Fred and his brother Cyril were sent to St John's Orphanage for Boys in Goulburn. Frederick and Cyril grew up in the orphanage and attended school in Goulburn. When the First World War broke out in 1914, Fred was working as a dairyman and a farm labourer in the Taralga district. Fred Kelly enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 21st of August 1915. He was assigned to the reinforcements of the 2nd Battalion and began a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service in December that year, sailing from Sydney on board the troop ship Aeneas. After several weeks at sea, Private Kelly arrived in Egypt, where he found himself amongst new recruits and veterans of the recently abandoned Gallipoli campaign. He continued training until February 1916, when he was transferred to the ranks of the newly formed 54th Battalion during a period of expansion in the AIF. Soon after joining his new unit, Private Kelly became ill and he was sent to hospital. He remained away from his unit for several months and rejoined just in time to embark for France at the end of June 1916. After a long voyage, Kelly and his comrades disembarked on the French city at Marseille. They were sent north to take up positions in the trenches near the village of Flabé. This area, known as the nursery sector, a relatively quiet sector on the front where troops were introduced to trench warfare. Kelly and his comrades found themselves opposite the enemy-held village of Fromelles, which they attacked on the 19th of July 1916. When the British and Australians began their advance, they were immediately met with carnage. Men were annihilated in waves by the enemy forces, who held significant advantage on the battlefield. The attack quickly floundered and they were forced to withdraw, having gained none of their objectives. The 54th Battalion suffered an appalling casualty rate, losing the equivalent of 65% of its fighting strength. This was Private Kelly's introduction to the war on the Western Front. He and his comrades were withdrawn for a short period of rest before resuming ordinary duties in the sector. They spent several weeks in Belgium in early October before moving to the Somme Valley in time for the onset of a bitterly cold winter. Kelly's battalion was manning the front lines on the 29th of October when Kelly was severely wounded in the arm by shell fire during an enemy barrage. Private Kelly was evacuated to a casualty clearing station, then onto an ambulance train. From there, he was evacuated to an English hospital in Birmingham, where he received treatment for his wounds. Kelly spent Christmas and New Year's in hospital. By March 1917, he had recovered and was permitted to return to France. He rejoined his unit in the front lines near Gurdacourt later that month, just as the enemy began a strategic withdrawal to the fortified Hindenburg Line. Over the days that followed, Kelly and his comrades occupied German trenches as the enemy pulled back. They met little opposition during this period and were largely engaged in salvage and construction work and reconnaissance missions. Kelly's battalion occupied the ruined village of Rencourt-le-Baume on the 25th of March and had 3 days rest before leaving the 30th Battalion forward trenches on the night of the 29th. As they moved into their positions, Kelly and his comrades were targeted by enemy artillery and aircraft. That evening, Private Fred Kelly was killed in action. Buried at Queant Road Cemetery in France, he was 21 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right. among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Frederick Joseph Anthony Kelly, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.